All right, welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Finn. I'm the membership manager at NFRC. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on IGUs and helping improve the performance of your products. Today's webinar will be recorded, so tomorrow we'll get the presentation out to everyone, along with any other resources that were mentioned throughout the presentation. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please just put them in the question panel on your GoTo, and we will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. I do want to take just a quick moment to thank all of our sustainability sponsors. If you have any questions about sustainability and becoming a sponsor, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to give you more information. So I am going to hand it over to Robert Hart, who will be followed by Sean Foley from Guardian Glass. So Robert, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thanks Jessica. So I'm gonna say hi with my camera on here and then I'm gonna turn it off so nobody has to stare at my renovation in my basement while I talk. So I'm gonna turn that off, there we go. And let's see here. Hopefully we can see that. Can we see that, Jessica?
Yes, looks good.
All right. Okay, so yeah, today I'm going to talk about insulating glass units and understanding kind of performance potential of existing products. So what does that mean? So the outline here, this is really a follow-up to a talk we did in February on frames. So if you missed that or if you want to revisit that at a later date, here's a link to that, and potentially Jessica could put that in the chat or something like that as well. What this talk is it's kind of a look at different IGU options on the market, so glass and spacer, gas, thicknesses, and a kind of a dive. We're going to look at those through a dive in the NFRC certified product database on how performance targets are currently being met by manufacturers. So the outcome of this is, I hope you get some ideas, discuss with your suppliers or your design team, your simulators, and those folks about potential ways of hitting kind of performance targets. And yeah, there we go. And specifically, what we're interested in here is, of course, is the Energy Star. And since the February talk where draft 1 was available, draft 2 has come out. There's some small changes, so highlighted those on the solar heating on the kind of north trade-off area. So it's been relaxed a little bit in the northern zone, and I'll go over kind of the impact of what that relaxation means further on in the talk. And note this isn't final yet either, so this is draft 2. I'm not privy to any information about if this is finalized or if there's going to be a draft 3 with different numbers as well. But for the purposes of this talk, we're going to focus on these numbers and that kind of performance level. So I'll start out by just kind of briefly going over some of the Windows sales data just to set some frame about areas that are important, what we're going to focus on. Of course, the northern and north central zones are what looking at those changes to Energy Star would seem to be the toughest to achieve. And those are important areas, right? So about 60% of residential units being sold right now are in those climate zones. So that's an important, if you sell in that area, it's important to understand how to achieve those levels. I have a little bit less data on the kind of glass configurations that are being sold in the market. I'm sure others have some more granular data, but the FGIA study, the latest one, has somewhat of a breakdown on just kind of glazing types that are in the units being sold. And you see about 90% of windows being sold right now, residential windows, have a low E coating in them. This kind of goes along with 80 to 90% of windows being sold are Energy Star at this point. So that sort of translates fairly well into that idea. So most, low E is pretty ubiquitous in the market at this point in all, frame types, whether it's vinyl, wood, aluminum, or others, it's pretty common in all. On spacer side of things, again, the kind of FGIA just kind of brackets things into well, 99% are warm edge spacers, and that's really essentially anything that's not an aluminum box spacer, I guess is how I read that. They kind of further divide that into kind of rigid versions versus non-rigid. Rigid are these kind of stainless steel, tin plate, kind of U-channel, or U-shaped, not U-channel spacers. The non-rigid are your butyls, your foams, your kind of rolled up type spacers. And if we look at the database, so over here on the right, double pane and triple pane, kind of looking at just the number of products that are certified with these different types of spacers, you can see that the U-shaped spacers are by far the most common, followed by some of the non-rigid, the foams, thermoplastic spacers, and then finally some of the other stainless steel tin-plated type spacers. And there's of these categories 5 to 10 different kind of spacer types that pretty much dominate the market on what's being certified. So I'm not going to go super deep into spacers on this talk, but I wanted to mention that if you are interested in re-examining what you're doing for spacers, you want to get more understanding of how that performance is that's going to impact your performance. Then I suggest looking at that. I've kind of linked to different papers here. They're a little dated at this point, 2005, 2013, but the kind of analysis that's done is still very relevant. There's probably a few different spacer technologies on the market since this was released, but the process that was used in these is still applicable and can still help guide you on performance targets. And one of the reasons I don't go into the depths in this talk is just simply, I'm focusing on the NFRC CPD data, and other than kind of spacer types that are being certified, there isn't much information in the database about that. In North America, we don't use, say, like the psi value that they do in Europe, which would give you more insight into kind of spacer performance. So really just the kind of center of glass versus whole window U factor, which kind of brings in the frame as well. So again, if you're looking at getting more depth on spacers, I recommend taking a look at these publications. So starting looking at glass, so kind of more starting to go deeper into the CPD here, looking at different glass and what's being certified. So I start out just like I did on the frames one. If you're on that, is I'm focusing on double pane, or I should say not always on double pane here, but vertical sliders for most of my talk. Simply because that's 3/4 of the units being sold, and it's typically the hardest product to get to meet these performance targets that we're talking about. And so just in the interest of time, keeping it focused on one type of frame. So everything in here will be talking about vertical slider performance, and then double and triple pane units within that. So this particular figure is just on double panes, looking at what kind of glass types are just unique glass types that are being certified. And so, just kind of starting at the very top, the International Glazing Database has about 6,300 products. And of course, that varies by a few depending on which version you're looking at. So if you go into your Windows software right now, you might see a number slightly different than this, than any of these, but it'll be fairly close. The NFRC kind of pound sign, which is layers that are proved to be used in NFRC certified products, is about 4,600, 46 to 4,700 here. And if we look at, now kind of boiling that down to the double pane vertical sliders, there was about 1,000 unique glazing layers that are being used. About 600 of those are low E coated. So that's quite a few, a small fraction of what's actually available, but still a large number of glass products. But if we just look at kind of a histogram here, a frequency of what's actually certified, you can see that it's really concentrated to a few different layers. So about 10 different unique product IDs or glazing layer IDs is about 20% of the products certified in the database. 90% of the products certified is about 160 different glass IDs. So again, it's only a relatively few number of products are actually being certified, even though there's quite a few total, just much less frequently. Looking at thicknesses, there's no surprise here. The kind of 3mm double strength glass is by far the most common being certified. followed by fairly equally, the single strength 2 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 5, and to a lesser extent 6 millimeters being certified. So really no surprises here. You can see 3 millimeter has been most common for quite some time. So pulling this to now going from glass just to the IGUs themselves. What does that look like on what's being kind of certified? What kind of configurations are manufacturers certifying? So I broke this out just would make this a little bit more visual. Looking at this data set. So starting with the double panes, this is double clear, a double low E, with low E on surface 2, low E with surface 3, and then a kind of surface 2 room side surface 4 low E type configuration. With some of the statistics here, just of total number of products that are certified with that configuration, the number of unique product series, and the number of unique manufacturers that have at least one product certified with this configuration. You see the most commonly certified, at least by manufacturers and by product series, is a surface 2 coated low E product, and it's about 28% of the total double pane products that are certified on the vertical sliders. But just by total product numbers, the actual surface 3 coated product, 41% of these of the total products in the database have this configuration, and pretty close to the same. 3/4 of the manufacturers have something in this line. Interesting one here, since this is talking about meeting higher performance targets, one to really kind of look at here is the surface 4 coated low E. And it's fairly common, right? Some greater than 50% of the manufacturers have a product certified already with the surface 4 coated low E. 65% of the product series have some configuration of this already certified. It's about 13% total products. Looking at triple panes, the most common one across the board here is the surface 2, surface 5 coated product. Greater than 80% of manufacturers and product series have this configuration certified. Another one kind of maybe interesting to take note of here is kind of these two at the end, where you have surface 2 or surface 3. I'm kind of in the corollary here, surface 4 or surface 5, one or the other certified, leaving one kind of gap that doesn't have a low E coating. This is kind of comparable nominally in performance to this surface 4 coated low E double. And so you can kind of think of some manufacturers have this certified as an alternative to that double configuration. So, if your product can meet the performance levels you're going for with this double, if this kind of single low E coated triple, it could be an option, potentially cheaper depending on your cost for that surface 4 low E of meeting their performance targets that you need to hit. IGU widths, so double pane in blue here. Of course, no surprise, 3/4 inch IGU, which is this kind of optimal gap for your 3 millimeter glass, because your 1/2 inch basically gap between glass for a double. So that's most commonly certified. 7/8 inch actually isn't too far behind though, still pretty common. Looking at triples, there's a peak at 1 inch. It has somewhat of a peak here at 7/8 inch. And you can see that the total number of products certified with triple pane and double pane at the 1 inch level are about the same. So I'm of course, quite commonly, if you have a double pane that can reach that 1 inch IGU thickness, you're going to certify that product line with a triple commonly as well. So no surprises here on IGU widths. If we take that to a kind of adding another dimension to that data in looking at this heat map, and I'll take a second here on the heat maps, because if you weren't on the last frames talk, there's a lot of these in this talk going forward, so I just want to make sure you understand what they're showing. And so this is just kind of a 2-dimensional histogram here, and so again, just like on the last graphs, IGU width here on the x-axis, you can see these bands at that 3/4 inch, 7/8 inch, 1 inch IGU. So just like before, we added a second dimension here of center of glass U factor. And so, just looking at the peaks, center glass U factor around 0.25, 3/4 inch IGU, that is the kind of peak of performance, and these are kind of number of products certified, something like 45,000 products certified with that specific bin. And so, that's just how to read these. Interesting here is, pulling this to 2 dimensions, we can see that, there's a couple groupings here, right? So there's a kind of group at this 0.3 center glass U factor, a group at that kind of 0.25 center glass U factor with the double panes, and we'll take a look at that in a second. On the triple panes, similar bands, right? We have the 7/8 inch, the 1 inch, the 1 1/8 kind of groups on the IGU width. Although on the center glass U factor, you can see that they kind of blend together. There's no kind of real differentiation, at least on looking at it here. And that's because there's a lot more variables with the triple panes, right? You can have double coatings and lots of gas filled. There's lots of more variations available, so you kind of see lots of these bands. But on the double pane, going back to this differentiation, if we want to try to understand that differentiation, kind of separating out gas fills, so just air versus argon, we can see that really this accounts for that big difference that you see, kind of 0.30 to 0.25. And summarizing it over here on the left, there's nominally about a 0.05 U factor gain or drop lower in U factor to switch that argon fill. Going to the NFRC calls AR3, this kind of argon-krypton blend of a product. You can see that, on average, this has a pretty wide range, but on average, it's about a 0.02 incremental benefit. And you can see this is typically used in the 3/4 inch, not the 7/8, simply because it's not necessarily needed at that larger gap between the glass. So you won't get necessarily the performance benefit by using it here. And interestingly, with krypton, you can see that there really isn't much of a benefit at these gap widths to go from from this blend to a full krypton unit, simply because you're just wide enough that krypton's kind of optimum width is narrower gap between glass. So you're not getting that performance benefit by going to it, with these 3/4 or 7/8 inch IGUs. On the triple pane, so now when you separate them out, you can kind of see that more of that differentiation, and it's pretty similar to the doubles. Air to argon is nominally a 0.05 U factor increase. To the blend or argon krypton blend, it's a little bit better, 0.03. And again, typically with these triple panes, at 7/8 to 1 inch, they're undersized. So they're not optimum gaps like the double panes were. And so you'll see now, from that kind of blend to a full krypton unit, where you'll see an actual performance gain again of nominally 0.03 on average, where this performance gets better. Again, because these units are kind of somewhat non-optimum on their gap widths. If you get to the 1 1/8, 1 1/4, that's when you'll start to see that krypton will have less and less of any impact at all. So looking at how these units kind of translate from the center of glass performance to the whole window performance. So I've swapped out IGU width on the x-axis here to window U factor. And I've drawn just kind of this line of symmetry here. So if the unit had the same center of glass U factor as the whole window performance, this kind of frequency or plot would land right on this red line here. And you can see that, pretty much always the window, so that your frame and spacer system are going to make the U factor higher in the unit. You can kind of see how that shift works. And this line isn't parallel. Of course, it's a little bit, the slope is a little bit higher. So it's, somewhere up in this, 0.4 range or so, they kind of intersect. And that kind of intersects with your average frame spacer performance. But for, if we just look at it, a real simple look at, what at the kind of levels that are most commonly certified, down here in this kind of 0.25 center of glass, 0.3 window U factor, you can see that, nominally this window U factor is around 0.03 higher than center of glass. And of course, where you sit on that line is very dependent on your spacer and framing systems and how high those are performing. Triple panes, it's a pretty similar curve, basically the same slope. It's just that it lies further down along this line here. You know, the performance is better. So you're kind of pulling further and further away from that line of symmetry. And at a typical triple pane performance level, it's something like 0.05 incremental rise in U factor for the window over center glass. But again, you can see that variation is fairly wide, really depending on those other factors outside of the IGU itself. So now I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of focus on kind of meeting the criteria in those certain locations. So, you know, what do you have to do, or what differentiates units kind of trying to meet the south criteria that we talked about before. So for, you know, I kind of put up here in the upper right-hand corner that just for reference here, the version 6 versus version 7, of what that performance levels were. And I've shown them on this map here as well. And so that, you know, again, a heat map, but this time now I've window U factor. So this is no longer center of glass. We're looking at full window on the y-axis, solar heat gain on the x-axis here, and kind of plotted those, you know, units that meet the criteria, the Energy Star draft 2, version 7 draft 2 criteria. So, you know, version 6 here was in yellow, the new version 7 here highlighted in red, and just looking at where products, you know, where products are currently certified. And you can see, you know, generally for the South, you know, most products, you know, the peak of performance here was already in this range. You know, of course, there's some out here as well, but if you were meeting version 6 before, you know, most common people are already meeting version 7 as well. And, you know, kind of looking at some of these bands, what I call a medium solar gain, which is kind of typically your double silver products, kind of lying out here in this higher solar heat gain, you know, 0.3 level. Your low solar gain, your triple silver type products at that kind of 0.22, 0.23 solar heat gain level in these bands. So, you know, to meet, you know, version 6 and version 7, you really need to have that kind of low solar gain, triple silver type glazing in your unit. And then moving from kind of how do you get your unit from if you were outside of that version 7 criteria down inside of it, you know, looking at air versus argon fill really gives you that clear picture of moving that performance target. Remember that kind of 0.05 in center glass level to, you know, slightly less when it gets to the full window, but it gives the same idea. You know, this peak of, if we're looking at air-filled units, you know, somewhere around 0.33, 0.34. Switching to an argon-filled units, you know, you see yourself down here at the performance level, you know, 0.228, 0.29, performance well inside of the criteria for version 7. So, you know, kind of in summary for the South here is, you know, you probably already have something that meets version 7 criteria already. If not, of course, you need to use a low solar gain. That's really required. And argon gas fill. Those two, you know, fairly easy, simply, you're most likely there. Moving to South Central. Of course, the figure changes a bit here. This South Central criteria had a you know, lower U factor requirement at 0.3. The version 7 one moves it even a little bit lower. And you can see now where that kind of peak performance level is a little bit outside of the South Central kind of U factor. Of course, the low solar gain product kind of approach still applies. But now when we look at air-filled versus argon-filled, you can see again that the argon-filled really gets you right there, right on the edge. There's lots of products certified down lower, but you're still, you know, you're kind of bridging that gap here kind of with what's most frequently certified in the database now. If we just kind of add another level to that, you know, what we did to the South criteria, and let's look at, you know, grouping the kind of rigid spacers versus non-rigid spacers, again, how using those categories that I defined earlier. You can see that, you know, now that kind of pulls you can see that difference of you know, kind of the non-rigid spacers typically being in this you know, most frequently certified range here. So again, you probably already have a product that meets the South Central criteria. If not, you know, low solar gain always required here. Argon gas fill, or non-rigid spacers, those are two good approaches to get there. Otherwise, or in addition to those, you may need to look at what frame you're using, and any insulation on the frame as well that may be needed to get you to that last little bit. So getting into the more interesting ones here, so more complicated, more interesting ones here. So north central criteria, where we see a fairly large drop from 0.30 to 0.24 in the U factor. So I'll kind of start introducing triple pane products as well, because those become a kind of viable option for meeting this criteria. You can clearly see, right, that the triple panes in that area now. And frankly, if it triple panes, so 84% of the product lines in the database are already reaching this. If you have a triple pane, option, I think really we don't have to talk about it too much. You probably already have a product that meets this criteria today. So I'll focus on the double panes, where about 25% of the product lines in the database, again, this is vertical sliders, are meeting this criteria. So significantly harder to meet this with a double pane. In a slightly different approach than what I did on those kind of south and south central, just kind of follow step by step of kind of a pathway to how you can reach this, or how most manufacturers are reaching this performance level. Just kind of scrolling through these kind of changes of filters, I guess, on the database. So this, first is showing just all the products being certified, and you'll see as we go through this, the scale will change, right? Because there's 300 plus unique product lines is kind of the peak bin. It's this one or this one, I'm not sure which one, is kind of your peak bin. But as we kind of filter out results, the scale will change because there's just fewer and fewer products that meet that criteria. So the first filter here we can do is just argon filled. I'll flip back and forth a few times so you can see that difference. And really what all we're doing is removing the air-filled units at that higher U factor performance, knowing that those are going to be harder and harder to reach, down into this high performance level. The biggest jump in performance is switching, turning on the surface 4 low E. So if we have a surface 4 low E coated product, you can see, we dropped quite a bit to kind of 0.26. 2.5, 2.6 level of performance is where you see the peak. Turning on another level of filters here, non-rigid spacers. So, using a higher insulating spacer, now you see you're really right at that level, kind of 0.25 performance level is your peak. And then doing, one more level of filtration here at the 7/8 inch IGUs. So from, generally just looking, turning off that 3/4 inch, and you can see now that it should have moved this label here. You can see actually now the peak is actually just inside the 0.24 level. So this is kind of a process if you're looking at meeting the criteria. This is how most manufacturers are doing it, and of course there's a wide range of performance in here, right? So some of these products that meet this, down at the 0.22 level, right? And that's, has a lot to do with other factors, such as the framing system and insulation in the frame and those sort of things as well. So if you're looking for the north, or I should say north central, not south central, if you have a frame that accommodates triple glazing, really you already have a product that can meet this criteria. If you're looking at trying to do it with double pane, you're gonna need a low or medium solar heat gain coating. You're gonna need a surface 4 coated low E. You're gonna need most likely going to need argon gas fill, a non-rigid spacer, and a 7/8 inch IGU or greater. I don't put required here because it's certainly possible to do these without that, but you see the kind of biggest frequency or use of these kind of approaches in the database. And then of course, I mentioned the frame here because that's still important, is that you still need to have a fairly good frame, and you may need to do additional changes to make the frame better as well to hit this performance level. So finally, looking at the north, so this is updated to draft 2 criteria for solar heat gain. So you can see these curves have changed, or this kind of criteria, trade-off criteria has changed a little bit from the last presentation I did. But still, it doesn't change much here. Generally most products are not meeting it. With the triple pane though, you can see it is still quite common. And scroll to that. So it's a little bit less than North Central, but still 80% of product lines in the database are meeting this criteria today. So similar to the North Central, if you have a triple pane, framing system or product offering today, you probably already have this solved for meeting this criteria. So we'll focus on double panes again. So this is kind of a difference from what we saw before, is that this 23% of the products, or 212 of product lines, are meeting this criteria, this kind of revised criteria from draft 2. When it was in draft 1, it was about 16%, or 140 or so product lines met that criteria. So definitely that little shift in solar heat gain coefficient brought in a lot more currently certified products into this, into meeting this category here. If we rescale this just to only look at products that are meeting the criteria, we can kind of get a clearer picture of the pathways to do it. So there's, in blue here, the standard path, which is 0.22 U factor level. And really that's, to do this, you kind of take the same approach as what I just went through on North Central, except, you kind of start requiring some of those things that I said were most likely needed, to get that extra 0.02 in U factor, you're going to start needing really higher performance, really high performance frames. You definitely need the gas fill, the 7-inch, 8-inch IGU, those sort of things. So it's just harder to reach it at that level. The trade-off approach, of course, you can see by just frequency of products that are certified is an easier way to meet it. And so we'll kind of talk about that here using that same approach as North Central. So starting off with all units, what it looks like with all units, moving to argon filled. Again, all that does is really just kind of pull units off the top at the higher U factor levels. But then the biggest change here, going to a higher solar heat gain. Of course, we need these products to be higher solar heat gain to be able to kind of fall in this area. I'm using a somewhat arbitrary cutoff of center of glass. Actually, that's SHGC, not U center of glass, of greater than equal to 0.45. And so, that's not really based off of anything, just really looking at the data and seeing where these products fall that it needed to be in this general area. But the highest solar heat gain is typically your single coat low-E's that are meeting this criteria here. So that shifts us over to the right area as far as solar heat gain. But finally, if we look at then surface 4 coated low-E products, we can see we already get that jump down in kind of the most frequently certified products over here at that kind of 0.25, sorry, 0.24 level. So that's really how you meet it here. It's in some ways it's easier than the North Central. We don't have to do that 7/8-inch filter, those sort of things. We're seeing that kind of concentration of products already there with just these filters. So what does that mean? Just in summary, again, triple glazing, if you have it, you probably already know how to get here. Doing the double pane standard path is going to just require more things. Instead of argon gas fill, you might even need some krypton, either a blend or full krypton fill. To get there, the 7/8-inch, the rigid spacer, you're going to need some sort of foam filled or insulated frame to be able to get to that using the standard approach. With the trade-off approach, you need this high solar heat gain product. The surface 4 low-E, you most likely need the argon fill. And then, kind of separated here, but yeah, you probably will need an insulating spacer as well, and some sort of improved frame to be able to get that performance target, or one or the other or both to get there. But it's certainly doable, and like I said, you saw, a quarter of the manufacturers already have a product certified in that level today. So that's it from me. hopefully that gives you a good summary of kind of what manufacturers are doing and how you can reach those targets. I don't know, Jessica, if you're going to, or Sean, are you running yours?
Oh, sorry, I am muted. Yep, I have it. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks for the opportunity. I want to introduce a couple of my colleagues from Guardian that are on the call with me. We've got Suresh Divisetti, who's our Director of Product Management, and also Raymond Roy, who's our Regional Technical Advisor. And I'm Sean Foley. I'm the residential segment marketing leader for Guardian North America. So it's a pleasure to take a couple minutes to talk with you, and hopefully we'll really kind of be able to show you that Energy Star has been on our radar for a really long time, and we've got, Energy Star version 7 has been on our radar for a really long time, and I think we've got the not only the product but the service portfolio to really kind of put some people's minds at ease and come up with a solution that'll help them meet their Energy Star goals for version 7 and beyond. And I'm going to go dark on my camera so I can see my screen. So as everyone kind of well knows, developing a higher performing window and door is a very hot topic in the fenestration industry today. You've got kind of regulatory agencies. We've got a new generation of home buyers and homeowners that are all desiring higher performing and energy savings products. Whether it's windows to refrigerators, ovens, and microwaves. It covers the gamut. And Energy Star version 7, like I said, has been on our radar, and we're continually innovating our product and service portfolio to meet the changing code landscape and the needs of our customers and the end consumer. While our experienced scientists and are very good at keeping ahead of the curve as far as standards and code changes, we also have a very strong sales and technical staff that is available to work with our customers to come up with, really to kind of walk them through all their available solutions and come up with a product solution, a coding solution that will help them meet the ever-changing code landscape at the lowest cost, lowest transitional cost for them. And we really make it our mission to really stay on top of building codes, Energy Star, and all the other regulations in North America today. And we're very and always on our radar, like I spoke earlier. How can we really help our customers bridge that gap from one code to the next, and really work together and explore their entire options and come up with a solution that meets their needs at the lowest transition costs. So on the next slide, I really want to illustrate our ClimateGuard portfolio, and kind of like what Robert did. We kind of have a product solutions kind of broken down by Energy Star zone, and this is very kind of general, high level, and we're here to work with the individual window and door manufacturers to come up with the exact solution to meet their goals for that Energy Star zone. But the next slide does a really kind of a nice job of bucketing our portfolio by zone and kind of illustrates the possible solutions to meet your needs. And we've got you'll kind of see that we've got a very comprehensive low E portfolio for the wood and vinyl window and door manufacturers in either a double pane, triple pane, forced surface coating options to meet these goals. And Raymond, I don't know if you want to kind of talk about this from a little bit more, or Suresh from a product or performance standpoint, but if you want to go a little bit deeper into the solutions.
Yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, I think Suresh, you can jump in here as well, but just to kind of dovetail into Robert's approach, as many of our other members of the NFRC, we've been watching this closely develop, and part of what we've done is we use the certified product database as a baseline as well. So looking at each of these zones, we're cognizant of that, triple pane, up north, it seems like a pretty easy solution the way that that Robert, framed it up. But from a manufacturing standpoint, that doesn't necessarily, benefit as far as on cost. It may be a higher cost. So what we've done is, we'll look at the both the U value as well as the high solar heat gain requirements. And what Sean put together here on this slide is representative that would meet Energy Star 7. There are some assumptions that you go into that though, which Robert also spoke to. And we look at it as kind of like Tom Culp does it well in some of his presentations on an a la carte approach. We feel, and we agree that likely on the left-hand side, lower left, you're going to lose some of those poor performing frames. If you come in with a decent frame, these a double pane, we feel is very, very likely doable. And what you'd see is that some of those are required, such as we see most likely argon, most likely a forced surface, no matter what. But then, then that's where you get into maybe some of the details of what kind of spacer system do you have? Is it full warm edge? Is it foam or not? And you start shaving off to the third decimal point in the rounding. So I think just looking at that heat map, it reminds us of kind of how we've been looking at some of the currently certified products, and whether or not we're seeing the same trend, is that there may be less in the heat map type representation, but we're confident that we have what can kind of get you there in a dual pane configuration, and if you have a decent frame to start with. And Suresh, I don't know if you want to talk about the zones there.
Yeah, just a clarification there. I think thank you, Raymond, on that. Right, when we look at the both northern zone and north central zone, right? If we want to meet the Energy Star V7 with the double pane, right, you really need a fourth surface coating, right? And this is where Guardian ClimateGuard IS, which is a fourth surface coating that we have positioned it for a long period of time, and we have a lot of history with it. And same thing in north central, right? You would need a fourth surface coating to meet the north central U factors. For the south central and southern zones, right? Guardian has the triple silver coating portfolio, which is 6227, 5323. These would help meet the Energy Star V7 requirements. We also have a double silver coating. It's ClimateGuard 55. Depending on the frame type and things like that, right? It could also be an option to meet the Energy Star V7 in those two zones. Okay, so as we think about the Energy Star V7, right? Guardian is proactively preparing to help our customers to meet the Energy Star V7, with double pane, preferably. If not double pane, triple pane in the northern zone. But based on what Raymond said, and based on Robert's earlier discussion, right? Energy Star V7 can be met with a double pane using the the argon fill and the fourth surface low E coatings. So that's based on the analysis we have done.
And I think really what we want to kind of the point we want to drive home, Robert, Raymond Suresh spoke to this, and Robert in his presentation. Everyone's different. This is very nuanced. So we really want to please reach out to us. I think Jessica's going to share our information at the end of the webinar, and let's start having these conversations, really understanding what your goals are for Energy Star version 7, and and really leverage our technical team and our product portfolios, and really kind of come up with a solution that works best for your long-term goals, because everyone's different. Everyone's got different plays in different regions of the country, has different aspirations as far as Energy Star version 7. So there's questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us and get us engaged early, because even though the implementation timing still isn't set in stone, it's going to be here. It's going to be here before we know it. That's all I have from my point. Raymond, Suresh, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add, Sean, is just as we're showing those tools that we have available, what I liked about Robert's presentation too is kind of the rule of thumb, and we looked at that the same way too. If you start out with you have a center of glass, that you're gonna lose so much performance on the U value, and the same goes to speaks to the solar heat gain coefficient as well. So having that just a baseline, you may not have something fully modeled, but you can go in there with your center of glass and then get a pretty good idea whether or not that's going to pass or not, just based on the rule of thumb.
Yeah, good point. So, please reach out to us with any questions or comments so we can work through your individual needs. But thanks for the time today. Hopefully, we'll be able to help down the road.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we'll take a couple minutes see if anyone has any questions. You can just put them in the question box on your go-to panel. So it doesn't look like we have any questions yet. I'll give people another minute or so to put any last minute questions in.
Maybe we're just so thorough we solved all the Energy Star problems.
Solved the problem. It was too easy. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell Doug to lower it. Huh?
Yeah, make it more challenging for us.
And again, if you do have questions, I know we'll provide the contact information for everyone who presented today, so you'll be able to reach out if you have any questions.
Hey, Jessica, there was a question came in from Jeff Baker. He said he had to drop off, but I don't have personally the information. But one of the questions came up was the price of Krypton. One thing I just think it's interesting that that Krypton. One of the things that maybe Robert, you can speak to that, because I know that you've talked about that in the past, maybe with the thin triples and everything else, but it's just not readily available. And I do see some of the ER3, as you mentioned, maybe a blend of Krypton, but I don't have any information on pricing. But we're definitely seeing that Krypton didn't come into the mix on a lot of our analysis that was necessary. Maybe on, so I don't see that as a major roadblock.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see Jeff's question, but I don't think anyone knows the price of Krypton. Oh, okay. Nobody knows the price of Krypton, because if you checked yesterday, it's probably different today. And that's somewhat of the problem, right? Over the last couple of years, starting with the pandemic, SpaceX taking up most of the Krypton supply, most of it being manufactured in Russia and Ukraine, added another level of cost to things. Yeah, Krypton is exceedingly expensive right now and very volatile. And so, yeah, you definitely see that he focused on pathways that using argon for most of the talk, because yeah, for cost-wise, generally, I think if you need to put krypton into your double pane, then it's going to be cheaper to do a triple type thing. It's a very expensive right now, and the cost is very volatile.
I do have another question. I want to make sure I'm asking it correctly. So if it's your question, jump in if I'm not. So with the evolving performance demands, new requirements, bridge the glass industry capabilities, and rising need for energy efficient designs, how is the industry changing? And then there's a follow-on, but energy performance standards are playing a larger role in business. How are energy performance changing the business environment?
Sean, that might be one for you. I'm on the research side.
Yeah, that's so I'm trying to understand the question, but it's that they're speaking to the business requirement as far as energy regulations going into production, into like manufacturing production facilities. I'm not sure. Whoever sent that question may have to send it to myself or Raymond and Suresh in an email. We'll try to take a look at it, make sure we're understanding
I'll make sure.
correctly. Yeah, there's a lot to unravel there.
Yeah, I can mention, just a couple of things. One is, we are seeing it not just in Windows, right? So Energy Star is getting tighter, but the latest version of IECC lower U factors for Windows. We're seeing changes, of course, in Canada, getting lower and lower U factors. In California, with their Title 24 kind of leading the way on energy codes in the US, and in the 2021 IECC, where whole building performance on new construction side, where we're seeing, really kind of, we did a paper on this recently in ASHRAE Journal, that, triple pane level of performance, so it doesn't have to be a triple pane, but just kind of that nominal performance level can give you an equal energy trade-off for your walls. So this is, it's not just the windows themselves, I guess they're not happening in isolation. The buildings themselves, commercial and residential, the codes and standards are getting tighter and tighter. And Windows are going to, play a big part in this, right, going forward. Because at some point, if Windows keep staying at a relatively poor performance, right, compared to walls and roofs and everything else, they're pretty low performing. Codes and going to have to either start making the windows smaller, or the windows have to get better to try to meet those energy targets. So I think you can start seeing kind of changes in the market will be happening because of that.
Yeah, I think some of that layman's language too makes sense, common sense language, Robert, such as like a Fenestration Canada, production, webinar where they talked about trade-offs exactly that for triple pane versus 7 solar panels on your roof. So it was just even exchange where they did the analysis on as far as the benefit. But one of the things they pointed out was triple pane gives you comfort kind of around, throughout the day and night, right? Versus just solar panels. But that's just straight up energy exchange rather than other factors as well.
Yeah. That actually brings up a good point. For Windows sales, right, selling performance, energy has always been a tough one to sell, right? The energy is cheap in the US. Incremental energy performance benefits are always been a tough sell for manufacturers. But comfort isn't, right? So, selling the additional comfort you get from a higher performance window and those sort of things is something that can, really give you that benefit or that kind of edge of as we see more and more high performance products get in the market. We see, I think there was a NAHB survey about, customer preferences and triple panes, or, that performance level of triple panes was high on the list of kind of wants, because, if you've experienced the comfort of being in a house with that higher performance products, you start to, the market starts to demand that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because, the payback for comfort is immediate as soon as you replace that old drafty window. I mean, it's not a 5-year, 10-year payback model. It's that day.
We do have another question. So 4 surface coatings are available on double pane windows or only triple?
Double or triple?
Yeah. We say 4 surface, but I guess for double that would be a room side, would be 4 surface. For a triple, that would be the 6 surface, would be room side. And those exist. I didn't show them in the chart I did, but there are products certified. It just wasn't really necessary to meet these requirements, but there are certainly people that certify triples with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, on a triple, typically you're going to see a progression, right? So you're going to see a surface number 2, and then maybe a second coating, definitely argon fill, and then finally you would look to the 6th surface if needed.
That is it for the questions. So again, please feel free to reach out after the webinar if you do have questions, and we'll make sure you get all the contact information. And then just before everyone goes, I just want to remind everybody to register for our fall membership meeting that's coming up in October. Registration opened on Tuesday, and we will be in San Diego in October. So we hope that everyone will be able to join us. And again, when you do go and watch the video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way whenever we do post new videos, you will be notified and can stay up to date. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.